Senator Marco Rubio once warned America about executive overreach, about losing our moral clarity and letting power go unchecked. Now, Secretary Rubio is doing everything Senator Rubio once condemned. Gregory Meeks just called him out, exposing one of the sharpest political reversals in modern U.S. history. Stay with me. You need to hear this.
Secretary Rubio, I'm glad you are finally before this committee. Your testimony actually comes long after the State Department, under your leadership, took actions without required congressional consultation or that were contrary to the law. But I guess it's better late than never. But let me be clear, showing up months after the fact and refusing to stay until every member has questioned you for 5 minutes as entitled to under House rules are not the standards to which we hold the Secretary of State. Mr. Secretary, I've known you for a while, and I respected very much Senator Rubio, even when we disagreed. Senator Rubio was a principled statesman. Secretary Rubio, however, as we've seen in the past few months, is something different entirely. As a senator, you spoke often and forcefully about the dangers of executive overreach. You warned America not to lose its moral clarity or sacrifice democratic principles for short-term gain. Senator Rubio recognized that we cannot allow the executive branch to unilaterally determine the direction of the United States foreign policy without accountability to Congress. Secretary Rubio is doing precisely what Senator Rubio feared, withholding congressional appropriated funds, stonewalling oversight, and acting as if laws passed by this body are optional. Secretary Rubio has presided over the dismantling and destruction of everything Senator Rubio once defended. So although you may be the Secretary of State, the acting head of USAID, the National Security Advisor, the Archivist of America, the empire you have stumbled upon is not one of influence, sir. It is a kingdom of ash. So I ask, was it worth it? Was it worth it to allow the near extension of U.S. foreign assistance and USAID, which Senator Rubio said, and I quote, is a very cost-effective way not only to export our values and our example, but to advance our security and our economic interests? And lie is exactly what this administration has done again and again. Each time Elon Musk and his department of arsonists brag and mislead the American public about massively inflated savings or lie about the program they have cut and their purpose, they're not telling you about the food that rotted on the shelves while people went hungry, or the medicine that was undistributed to children needlessly suffering, or the trust that was lost by your actions. But I believe you know better, because you've said as much, and yet here we are. In 2022, Senator Rubio warned about the urgent and growing threat posed by China and called for a fully funded State Department and USAID. Senator Rubio wrote that soft power tools and alliances were vital to our national security. And today, Secretary Rubio is here to defend an 84% cut of the Foreign Affairs budget. How does hollowing out our State Department and dismantling USAID help us compete with China? How does the America Alone budget project American strength? On human rights, the contrast is even starker. Senator Rubio built his political brand on the cause of freedom and dignity. You condemned autocrats in Caracas, Havana, and Beijing for silencing dissent. But Secretary Rubio, he looks the other way when strongmen commit similar abuses. Secretary Rubio even defied a Supreme Court order to facilitate the return of a wrongly detained spouse of an American citizen. And when Senator Rubio became the first Hispanic American to serve as Secretary of State, he made sure to pull the ladder up behind him. In the name of dismantling efforts to making hiring and promotion fair, as you call it, wokeness, you have unlawfully dismantled programs designed to address decades of historical exclusion. These are not political experiments. They were congressionally supported efforts rooted in bipartisan recognition that our diplomatic corps must reflect the diversity and the strength of the nation it represents abroad. These are initiatives that Senator Rubio supported. You replaced experienced career employees with ideologues and political loyalists. Under your watch, sir, America's diplomatic and development corps have suffered the greatest brain drain in history, and America has been weakened and made more isolated by the actions of an administration that has abandoned its allies, cozied up to dictators, and conducted a foreign policy driven not by interests of the American people, but in support of the personal enrichment of the president and his family. And with that, I yield back.
When Marco Rubio sat in the Senate, he sold himself as a defender of democratic principles, a moral voice warning against the abuse of executive power. He stood for accountability, for congressional oversight, for the idea that no administration should act above the law. But the man who showed up to this hearing as Secretary of State, that man was unrecognizable. Rep. Gregory Meeks didn't hold back. He said it plainly. The same Rubio who once railed against executive overreach is now the face of it. The same Rubio who called foreign aid a cost-effective way to export American values is now defending an 84% cut to that very same budget. Meeks drew a brutal contrast, Senator Rubio versus Secretary Rubio. One fought for democracy abroad. The other has, in Meeks's words, presided over a kingdom of ash. And that line, a kingdom of ash, it stuck. Because what Meeks was saying wasn't just about policy, it was about integrity, about the hollowing out of principle in the pursuit of power. Rubio once said America must never lose its moral clarity. Now, under his leadership, the State Department is stonewalling oversight, withholding congressionally approved funds, and acting as if the law is optional. Even worse, Meeks pointed out, Rubio has dismantled diversity and fairness programs in the name of fighting so-called wokeness, programs that Rubio himself once supported. The ladder he climbed, he's now pulled up behind him. And let's be clear, this isn't just a political shift, it's a moral collapse. The same man who once condemned autocrats in Havana and Beijing now looks away when strongmen commit the same abuses elsewhere, all while defending an administration that cozies up to dictators and punishes allies. Meeks commanded the room. Rubio used to know better. He used to understand that American power was strongest when it reflected American values. Now he defends cuts that weaken diplomacy, isolate allies, and shrink the U.S. footprint on the world stage. It's not just hypocrisy, it's betrayal of his own words, his own record, and his own legacy. And Meeks's final line hit like a hammer. You may have stumbled upon an empire, Mr. Secretary, but it's a kingdom of ash. A perfect summation of what happens when ambition burns hotter than conviction. Marco Rubio's transformation is a warning, not just about him, but about what happens when power replaces principle. When the same people who once defended democracy start dismantling it from the inside. If you want leaders who still believe in truth, accountability, and America's word meaning something, keep watching, keep questioning, and keep the light on. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below. Do you think Rubio lost his way, or was this who he was all along?